I'm going to show you how you can teach your kids about electronic circuits. Some of the things we'll need before we start are, we'll need some paper, because these are paper circuits. These are also very safe. We're not using any kind of house current. I want to teach kids, stay away from anything that you might see on the walls in the house. And we're not using this, alternating current AC. No good. We are using DC current, which is batteries. And that's another thing you're going to need. You're going to need a battery. And we're not just using any battery. We'll show you some types that you may or may not know about. Here's a regular 9 volt that you'll find in smoke detectors, AA that you might find in your TV remotes, a AAA that you might find in toys, and this itty bitty tiny, what's called a button cell battery. And we're actually going to use a type of button cell battery today. So we'll throw these out of the way. This is what we're going to use. This is a button cell, a 3 volt button cell. They're a little bit bigger, easy to handle, very low voltage, and super safe. You're also going to need a binder clip, a little tiny binder clip. I'll show you where that goes in just a little bit. And you're going to need some tape, regular Scotch tape, some special tape called copper tape, which is just metal tape, copper just like pennies. This metal tape is conductive and pretty cheap. You can get it online just about anywhere. Finally, you're going to need a light bulb, not this kind of light bulb. We're going to use an LED. Stands for light emitting diode, but it's another tiny little simple thing that we're going to use to make these paper circuits. Now I need to talk a little bit about polarity, and we're not going to use words like polarity with kids. We're going to use red and black licorice. And the way I sometimes talk about it is that we got people who love red licorice, people who love black licorice, but ultimately, if you like one and not the other, you never want them to touch. Ew, cooties. Who wants red black licorice? We always want to try to keep our licorice separate. And we're going to refer to the red licorice as plus, as positive, and the black as negative or minus. And we always want to keep these two separate when we're making circuits. And tell kids about, well, this will help in a number of things. It'll help with troubleshooting when things aren't working the way you expect them to. And it also teaches them a little bit of safety that you never want to have positive and negative touching. And that's good for knowledge down the road. Again, very different from house current, dangerous. Battery current, the little tiny battery, very safe. So let's begin. We're going to start with showing how to make a super simple paper circuit. And these you can print out online from the stemvan.com website. And it's just a simple PowerPoint file, and there are all kinds of things you can try. You can follow along, but this is the beginning one. And we're going to demonstrate the positive and the negative and how they all work to make a circuit. Now in its simplest form, we can make a circuit just with an LED and a battery. You'll notice on this LED that one leg is longer than the other. The longer is always going to be positive, and the shorter is always going to be negative. Red licorice, black licorice, plus, minus. And again, just like the battery, plus, minus. And you always want them not only to line up and match, but never to touch. So we'll make a simple circuit simply by touching the two, long to the positive, short to the negative, and look, we've just made our very first circuit. But we want to go a little bit further. We want to show how electricity flows and a little bit more. But I think even just doing that is touching some leads to a battery starts to get people thinking. I'm going to put this aside, and we're going to bring in the first, most basic way to make a circuit. And you'll see that there's a positive and negative, just like on the battery, And the one thing that this doesn't have, it's not in color. And for a variety of reasons, it's cheaper to print in black and white, but it really helps to reinforce plus, minus, positive, negative. Again, bringing it back in, positive red licorice, negative black licorice, don't let them touch. Let's start. We're going to lay out with our copper tape the positive line, and you can just cut that with your fingers. Something to keep in mind is this copper tape can be a little sharp, so if you're working with little ones, you just want to use a little bit of caution. This is adhesive backed, and it can be a little bit of a struggle if you've got big fingers like I do to separate the two, but with trying, you can do it. Now, I like to leave it connected because if you pull it off all the way, it can coil upon itself. So I try to align it, and we're just going to, I try to keep the backing connected as much as possible. And we're going to lay it out. We're going to follow these gray lines, positive, plus, red licorice. And then to take a turn, this stuff is pretty hardy in the sense that you can fiddle around with it. These circuits work best if you try not to break it. If you break it, it's no big deal. You can just add more material on top of the other. But keeping it together is going to make just a better example. And we're going to stop right about there. We can see plus, plus, one strip, not touching. That was easy. Now let's work on the negative. Black licorice. Ugh. I'll eat it, but I like red licorice. And we're going to follow this line as well. I'm going to just take a turn, move this around. And again, we don't want these two to touch. Don't want our red and black licorice getting in the way. Now, when we do want them to touch, is we're going to use our LED. And here's the long one, the short one. Long being positive, short one being negative. And we're just going to lay it right on top. Now to hold this down, this is where we get our everyday cheapo tape. And we're going to tape it right down. Now you want to make sure that there's a nice good connection. So I'll sometimes just push that down a little bit. These are pretty strong, but when you bend them, try to bend them not at the top, but actually on the wire. Okay, what are we missing? We've got our positive, red licorice to the positive, negative, black licorice to the negative. We need the battery. And here's where that clip's going to come in. We're going to place the negative side. Now, most button cells, they're not going to mark what's negative, but they do mark the positive. I don't know if you can see closely. There's a plus sign. So we're going to place this down. And then when we fold this over, it's going to complete an electrical circuit and it should light up that bulb. There we go. It's lit. And we're simply going to use this clip to hold it together. And voila. Now you can see it's flickering a little. This is a good area to play with troubleshooting. And that's usually because we haven't done a great job either of taping or clamping. And you can work with your kids to see, okay, can we clamp this a little bit better, make it a little bit brighter? But that's pretty good. And guess what? You've done it. You've just made your first electrical circuit. Now you can go a little bit further. Some of the other examples are fun. Just like electricity in the home, even though we're not playing with this, it has a switch to turn it on and off. Now, we don't want to keep taking the battery on and off to turn it on and off, so we have switches. And if we look here, I've already pre-done this. Just like before, we have our positive, we have our negative, red licorice, black licorice, and then we have a gap here. And this gap means that the circuit isn't connecting, and that's normally that would be called the fault, but since we're making a switch in here, what's going to happen is that this is going to close, complete the circuit, and get the electricity going. So let's align our negative to the negative, the positive to the positive, clip our battery on. Oops, it slipped. We keep the mistakes in because mistakes are about learning. And if we close this over, ta-da! We've made an on-off switch. And kids can play with that. They can do all kinds of stuff. Let's go one step further. Take this out of the way. This is a fun one. And for this, I'm going to basically reverse engineer and show you how it was made. But I'm going to show you the final first. Here we have a little fire truck, and we've used a red LED. And if we slide our finger across, this one could use some work. But you can see, let's hold the battery down a little bit better. You can light the fire engine LED as you slide your finger. It's kind of like a fire engine LED flashing on and off. Now, how do we do this? Pretty simple. There's a little hole for the LED. Let's disconnect the battery. And as we open this up, we can see a slightly more advanced circuit with a switch, little switches that turn it on and off. Now let's follow this. Let's do some troubleshooting. We have our red licorice, the plus, and then it stops. It's not connected. We have our black licorice, the minus, the negative, and here it is connected between the negative and the positive. Now this is kind of confusing. So negative doesn't touch. Here's the battery, just like in the other circuits. And then this side connects all the way down and doesn't connect. So if we were to throw the battery in here, just make sure that we put it in the right way. Now if you put this in the wrong way, nothing's going to happen. There's not going to be a fire, no one's going to get electrocuted. It's all very, very safe. So now as we close this, what's going to happen is that this is going to make a completed circuit. And then as we move our finger along, this is going to complete the circuit. Move it along, circuit is incomplete, and then this lights up again. Now you'll see I probably should have worked a little bit harder to align these, but again, it's troubleshooting, it's things that kids need to learn in understanding electronics. And if we fold this over, it's not working. Let's see why it's not working. I'm going to guess the battery isn't wonderfully connected. So if we turn that a little bit, now we see. Now I'm just moving my finger along because it takes a certain light touch to make it slide and light. Some of that is due because we're using this corrugated cardboard, and that is not so great. You're better off with a nice flat surface. On, off, on, off, on. So that's pretty good. It works. And then we can make a fire truck, or we can even, this is where you want to get creative. Let's say we want to make a little ladybug that lights up. All right, that could be the world's worst ladybug. Yep, I think this is the world's worst ladybug. I'll get some little feet in here. I wasn't planning on drawing. I'm sure your kids can do a much better job. But here's the fun part. Put this over here, and we can make the ladybug light up. I like to do a face. Faces are easier. We'll do a nose that lights up. Woo! All right, it's hard to write on this. We'll stick the nose about where the LED is, and we can turn it on and off. But you get the idea. We're using very simple, safe, basic electronics. You don't need fancy supplies. You get this online, really cheap. I can't remember what a roll is, but I think it's just a couple bucks. These button cell batteries last a long time. You get a nice package of 10 or 20 or 50, and again, they last really long time. And then the LEDs, you can get all kinds of colors. Here's a really cool one that, let me just take this out. Let's see. I'm going to take a battery, long with the long, short with the short, and I think this is one of my color changing LEDs. And if we leave that connected, you'll see they change colors. And you just let your mind go. Let work with your kids and make all kinds of stuff and make it light up. And super safe. I think you probably see the colors this way better. And that's it. What's more fun than learning about electricity, being creative, and just exploring what electricity can do in all these different ways that you can use it. In that PowerPoint file that has these printable pieces, there are also some other exercises. You can learn how to light up multiple bulbs. But I still have fun. Even just showing this stuff off, I think it's a lot of fun. And I get ideas. Now, if you really want to get creative, you can also buy, this is a little buzzer. And here's the long, here's the short, positive, negative, nothing, little 3 volts. And we can combine this with the fire engine, but this could get annoying depending on how much your kids want to play with the buzzers. That's it. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, send me an email. Just use info@thestemvan.com and we'll get back to you.